Well, good morning and welcome to day 4 of VoteVets Live, special edition marking the 2020 Democratic National Convention. Today, we're kicking things off with a panel discussion with Doug Wilson, National Security Advisor to Pete Buttigieg, and Sue Fulton, former chair of the West Point Board of Visitors. And then we'll talk to U.S. Senator Gary Peters of Michigan, Maryland Congressman Anthony Brown, and we'll close out with an update from Leo Cruz of Team Biden. So let's bring in Doug Wilson and Sue Fulton. Doug is a national security advisor to Pete, as I mentioned, and as a former senior Pentagon spokesman and former assistant secretary of defense for public affairs, largest government public affairs department, and also played a key role in the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The first openly gay individual to be Senate confirmed to a senior Pentagon role. Doug is a 3-time recipient of the Distinguished Public Service Award, the Pentagon's highest civilian honor. And Sue Fulton is a 1980 West Point graduate, part of the first class to admit women. She was a founding board member of Nights Out, the organization of LGBT West Point alumni and allies, OutServe, the association of actively serving LGBT service members, and Sparta, a transgender military organization. Sue played an active role in the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the military's transgender ban. During the Obama administration, she was appointed to the boards of visitors of West Point and the National Defense University. Doug and Sue, welcome to VoteVets Live. It's a treat to see you both this morning.
Thank you.
And Sue, I think we might need Sue's audio. I think Sue, you're muted still. We're going to go ahead and start with your thoughts on some of the pressing issues that are facing our country right now. And then I want to talk about the future, both the leadership that we've seen on display this week at the DNC and the work that we know lies ahead if we can pull this thing off in November. Sue, I want to start with you. You've led in the military, in business, and now at the state level, managing through this pandemic and having to lead in crisis and really figure things out in an unprecedented fashion. Talk to me about the impact of Donald Trump's failed federal response to COVID-19 on state and local leaders and what it's going to take when Joe Biden is elected to lead us out of this pandemic, finally.
Thanks, Will. First, I run a large customer-facing agency for the state of New Jersey. We've had to completely reimagine the way we do business, as many people have. PPE, construction to create barriers in our facilities, a new queuing system, IT work to move our transactions online where we can, using space from empty state colleges. It's been an incredible leadership challenge. But all of that has been made so much harder by an administration and a president who's created confusion and doubt and fear at every turn. My employees don't know what to think. They're terrified. There's so much misinformation, lack of information. It's created special challenges to manage that. We're fortunate that, we have a boss like Governor Phil Murphy, who actually came out of cancer surgery a couple of weeks before the coronavirus really hit us. And he's been a superhero, going on TV every day, taking every question from the media and trying to manage this disinformation that's coming from the top. But managing this as 50 individual states, we formed partnerships in the Northeast. It's been a disaster. What we're going to need is a concentrated, centralized response to this pandemic. It's unprecedented in our lifetimes and maybe before. But that's what we're looking forward to. Joe Biden has the ability to do that.
Absolutely. Now, Doug, you've served at the highest levels of the Department of Defense. You know that our national security posture, our military readiness has been degraded by this president and his allies. Can you paint us a picture of the national security challenges that we face today heading into this pivotal election and what Joe Biden will be working to do once we get him in the White House come November?
The national security challenges that we are going to face after Trump are enormous. The rocks that we are going to have to push uphill are many and very difficult. I think we're very lucky to be able to have somebody like Joe Biden, who has been there on so many of these issues in so many of these circumstances and knows just what to do and how to do it. I think first and foremost, it's going to be rebuilding the trust and credibility among allies and respect by adversaries that we mean what we mean and we will do what we're going to do, what we say we're going to do after this is over. In Joe Biden, you are not going to see a president who will throw allies with whom we have partnered on the battlefield, like the Kurds, under the bus. You will see a man who will build alliances and do everything he possibly can to restore our credibility. You're not going to see a man who's going to use our military as political props. You're going to see someone whose son served overseas and who knows personally what it is that the men and women in uniform, people like you, people like Sue, who have served our country overseas, go through and need in order to do their jobs. And you are going to see somebody who understands that not only is it the men and women in uniform who need the support, it is the families who support them who need the support. And in Joe Biden, we also have somebody who has a fantastic partner in Dr. Jill Biden, who understands what it takes and what those families need in order to make sure that they, like those who are serving in their families overseas, need for their well-being.
Absolutely. We've seen just this week in foreign policy developments more examples of American leadership absent because this president is running such a chaos show and just chooses to take every moment on the world stage to instead embrace our adversaries and spurn our allies. It's getting old. Sue, turning to the Pentagon, Doug hit on some of these themes. You have advised and provided oversight at the highest levels of the U.S. military, helping to drive policy change alongside folks like Doug. And a lot of that, and you love to talk about this, and it's always super empowering to hear it, is rooted in values. You talk about character development. Not something that Donald Trump cares about, not something that his political appointees care about. As we look ahead, how can a commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, and his team restore what's been lost by Donald Trump pardoning war criminals, targeting women and LGBTQ service members, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm enough of a nerd that I'm going to quote one of my favorite movies, The American President, where in the climactic speech, Michael Douglas says, Bob Runson says being president is to some extent about character. I'm here to tell you it's all about character. I think that's true throughout. Leadership is about character. Trump is a man who views common human decency as weakness. He treats our military, he has treated our military, not as a disciplined fighting force, but brutes and bullies without conscience. That's the kind of thinking that drives some of our most destructive problems. War crimes, sexual assault, racism, violent hazing. Our creed is not violence, but honor. It's not brutality, it's selfless service. It's all those honor, courage, commitment values. We need civilian leaders, especially in the Pentagon, who are going to link arms with our uniform leadership and stand up for those values. After 4 years of Trump's corruption, we are going to need to make it clear to our service members that anyone willing to compromise their honor and integrity, anyone not willing to stand up for the Constitution is not worthy of the young men and women who signed up to defend this nation. That's going to be an important job in the next administration.
Absolutely. Now, Doug, I want to talk a little bit more. You hit on it already, but your experience serving under President Obama and Vice President Biden, you're the first openly gay individual to be confirmed to a senior Pentagon role. You helped repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. What did you learn about Barack Obama and Joe Biden, their character, and the way that they led the Pentagon from your experience serving at the highest levels?
Well, last night we heard Barack Obama make it very clear in a single sentence. This president can't be the president that we need, President Trump, because he's incapable of it. He doesn't have what it takes to do the job and doesn't understand what it takes. What I saw, and I know Sue did, and so many people, men and women who worked at the Pentagon and elsewhere in government, in and out of uniform, saw two people who not only had empathy, but they had spine, and they listened. They listened, and their decisions were made after examining all the facts and taking into account what they thought would be best, not for them, not for their politics, but for the country. I'm going to give you one example. In addition to working on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I was also fortunate enough to be part of the first state dinner ever held for our men and women in uniform. This was a dinner that President Obama and Vice President Biden organized to honor the men and women who had served on the battlefield in Iraq after our troops were being withdrawn. And the people selected were selected by the senior enlisted, so that they were representative of those who had actually served on the battlefield and not chosen just by officers. And I'll never forget that night. So many men and women from all 50 states, from all parts of the country, sitting and being honored as if a head of state was being honored. And at the end of the dinner, we had buses that took everybody back. And there was about a dozen people who were missing, and the bus hadn't arrived. And finally, about 11:45, they all came back. And where had they been? They had all been at Joe Biden's table. And he had taken all of them back to his office and spent 2 hours after the dinner getting to know them, telling them all about the White House, giving them a personal tour, and making sure they understood that he understood them. I'm sure that you and Sue, as people who have been on the battlefield, understand that the basic thing you need to have in a commander-in-chief is trust, to know that that person is going to have your back. Joe Biden is going to have your back.
Well said, Doug. Sue, we have about a minute left each for these last questions for the two of you. So I want to go to you first. The DNC lineup this week. Let's just look ahead. What are you looking forward to in tonight's speeches? Who do you want to hear from?
Oh, well, in addition to Joe Biden, of course, Cory Booker, not just as a New Jerseyan or not just because he's my friend, but he always speaks from his soul. Tammy Duckworth, just a remarkable person, a veteran, a woman of color. Like Cory, she's a fighter. I think that's going to be amazing. We didn't look back, but I'll tell you, I'm still thinking about that video with Chuck Hagel and Brett McGurk and Marie Yovanovitch, and Colin Powell, talking about what's at stake. So I want to hear more tonight to remind people how heavy the stakes are.
Absolutely. Okay, Doug, to close us out, Mayor Pete ran an incredible campaign, won the Iowa caucus. You and I got to spend some time working together in that effort. He's endorsed Joe Biden. He's talked a lot about winning the era, looking forward. We're going to hear from him tonight. What do you think Mayor Pete is going to have to say?
I think Pete is going to emphasize two themes that have been consistent throughout this convention and consistent to why he ran, and that is belonging and resilience. I have to say, I've been involved with conventions since 1984, and this is, as Susan Rice said today, the warmest and most human convention I've ever seen. And I think the kinds of things that we saw in the roll call from all 50 states, and the kinds of things we've seen from people like the Shepherds, the parents of Matthew Shepard, casting their votes from Wyoming, who went through hell and have come out stronger for it. And Fred Gutenberg, who cast Florida's votes, the father of one of those killed in the Parkland shooting, and has come out the stronger for it. I think you also saw Gabby Giffords, whose struggle has been unbelievable. And anybody who has watched that over the course of these past 10 years can only be blown away by what they saw at the convention the other night. And I think the message Pete and this convention are going to show is we are resilient and everybody belongs. And that's the message that hopefully, as Pete used to say, will not only be for future former Republicans, but for those who have voted for Trump before and now have an opportunity to see what they are looking for in the country, represented by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Very well said. Doug and Sue, thank you both for joining us. We're going to have you back again to talk more soon, but thanks for your friendship, personally for your mentorship, and for your support of our work here at VoteVets. It means a lot.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. All right, next, we're honored to be joined by United States Senator Gary Peters. Senator Peters represents Michigan and has devoted much of his life to serving others. He served as a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy Reserve and has been ranked as one of the most effective bipartisan members of the Senate. The senator's number one priority has been making sure that Michigan families can thrive, whether that meant fighting for quality, affordable health care, lower prescription drug prices, defending the Great Lakes, protecting our schools, standing up for small businesses. Senator Peters, you've always put Michigan first, and we're honored to have you with us this morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, Will. Great to be with you as well. And thanks for all that VoteVets does, a great organization supporting men and women who've served our country in uniform and now serving in other capacities.
Thank you, sir. Well said. I mean, you are a great example of why we do this work, of having your voice in the Senate. And I want to talk about some policy issues you've been leading on, and then turn and look ahead to the final night of the Democratic National Convention night. Let's start with President Trump's attacks on the U.S. Postal Service. VoteVets, we've been hearing awful stories from veterans who are seeing delays in the delivery of prescription medications from the VA. At the same time, the president has basically said that this assault on USPS is tied to him wanting to prevent Americans from safely voting by mail in the midst of this pandemic. You're the top Democrat on the Senate's Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and you've been leading the fight to stop these actions, to hold the Postmaster General accountable, and even introducing legislation to stop further changes. Can you describe what's happening right now to the Postal Service, how serious it is for people across the country, and what we can do to help you fight back?
Well, no, I appreciate that question, and it is serious. The Postal Service is something that we rely on every day to get critical medicines to us, benefit checks, paychecks, pay your bills. If you're a small business owner, to get your business packages sent to your customers, just to conduct business. I mean, just integral part of our everyday life. And, it really came to my attention in mid-July, which coincides with the new Postmaster General that was appointed by President Trump to come in. And I just saw a huge surge of complaints from folks across the state of Michigan to my office. It's not unusual from time to time to get folks complaining about mail service. That's just part of what happens day to day. But then all of a sudden, we just got a flood of those complaints, and that's always on my radar. Something is up. What is into it? We started looking into it, and it was clear that people had seen declines. You mentioned veterans, for example. A lot of folks with the VA have seen delays in their medicines. One woman in particular, Michelle Brown, who talked to me, said that she orders medicines for her husband, who's a veteran. When she orders them, within 3 days, they are delivered. The most recent one at that time, which was at the end of July, it took 13 days for it to get to her, and it's continuing to do that. And he actually missed doses, and we know that's unacceptable. You can't miss your medicine, and that can have a big impact on his health. I've heard repeated reports like that occurring. So I opened up an investigation through the committee, the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. It's we need to do a deep dive into this. And I've been talking to folks in the Postal Service and the folks who are on the ground. These are our letter carriers, our postal workers, our mail handlers. And as you know, most of the folks, the U.S. Postal Service hires more veterans than anybody. I mean, those are veterans. Those are folks who are dedicated to serving their country. They're dedicated to making sure that the mail gets there on time and moves quickly. And they're telling me they're seeing policies put in place that they've never seen, and policies that actually delay the mail. They don't have overtime. If you don't have overtime, it's hard to deal with a surge of mail, which then puts you behind, that then causes problems. We see that the trucks, the transportation that goes from postal kind of processing center to processing center, they're going, even though they haven't fulfilled their mail, and that delays an extra day. Sorting machines, the machines that actually sort the mail, are being taken out of post offices. We're hearing that story all across the country as a result of that. And the whole ethos of the postal system is something that, our letter carriers and others are saying, every day we do everything we can to get all of the mail out of the post office and into people's mailboxes. And now they're hearing from managers saying, wait, you can go home. Do it tomorrow. It piles up. Then, of course, if you wait till tomorrow, it continues to do that. So tomorrow we will have a hearing. I've demanded a hearing and bringing in the Postmaster General. He will be under oath. He needs to answer a lot of questions from me and others. We've got a lot of tough questions, and the American people deserve answers, particularly as we're now focused on vote by mail and absentee ballots. In Michigan now, anybody can request an absentee ballot to be sent to them. And we've got to make sure that the Postal Service is delivering it on time. This is fundamental to our constitutional right to vote. And in the middle of a pandemic, people should be able to vote from the safety and security of their home. So this is a battle I encourage everybody to get in and to reach out to their member of Congress and senator and say, the Postal Service, we need to help the Postal Service do its job and not allow Postmaster General and President Trump get in the way.
Absolutely. And as you stated, 97,000 veterans who work for the Postal Service, and the president's assaults on the federal workforce have been constant since he took office, and it has touched so many veterans who transition out of the military, find a good job continuing to serve their country in a different capacity, earning benefits akin to those that they had while they were in uniform. So it is a continuation of that assault on labor from a man who's never worked an honest day in his life. It's sad to see. I want to talk about another subject in the Senate's hands right now, a new COVID-19 relief package. It's been more than 3 months since the House passed the HEROES Act. Our economy is in crisis. We've heard these stories during the DNC this week from everyday people, businesses, small businesses closing their doors for good. What needs to happen in order to provide relief for the American people? And why can't Senate Republicans get their act together and come to the table to get this job done?
Well, it's such an important question, and you're absolutely right. Senate Republicans have been unwilling to kind of step forward and negotiate in good faith to make sure that we're helping the American people. We came together for the CARES Act. We did that in a bipartisan way to provide assistance. One aspect that I did, I actually authored the Pandemic Assistance Act, which expanded eligibility for unemployment, which was critical for people who'd suddenly had the rug pulled out from underneath them and were a paycheck away from a crisis and needed to make sure that they could keep food on the table and a roof over their head and move that forward. But we realized this pandemic is lasting a whole lot longer than any of us would want. There's no question about it. And the impact is still significant. We don't know where the end is. We hope it's soon, but we've got to be prepared to continue to support both the folks, their families and small businesses going forward. And the House passed a very comprehensive package about 3 months ago. They stepped up and said, we need to continue to support the economy or the simultaneous healthcare crisis and economic crisis. Economists from across the board, regardless of their political leanings, say you've got to make sure the economy doesn't go into a deep hole because it's really hard to get out of a hole once you get in there. You've got to continue to provide this kind of support. The House acted. Mitch McConnell sat on his hands, didn't do anything. We continue to pound the table saying we've got to do more for small businesses and for families and to make sure that we're dealing with the public health aspects of it, increased testing and providing resources for our frontline providers. And he did nothing. And so we've now in a financial cliff with folks losing some of their benefits and are having a difficult time. We're facing many evictions and potential foreclosures as people deal with the crisis. The problem right now, my understanding is that of the Republican caucus, well over 20 of their members believe there should be zero amount for help for anybody, zero, which is unacceptable. And so we have gone in to try to negotiate. And my understanding is in the negotiations, Mitch McConnell didn't even show up. And if you don't show up, it's pretty hard to negotiate with someone who is unwilling to do that. So we're going to keep pushing hard. Obviously, we need to deal with the postal issue we're just talking about, but all of the other issues with unemployment and small business assistance, healthcare providers. So we're going to keep pushing it. But really, Mitch McConnell should be calling us back into session. We're not in session right now. It is unconscionable in my mind not to be in session when we're in the middle of a crisis of this magnitude.
Absolutely. I mean, and as you hit on earlier, it's not that hard to work across the aisle and to get some stuff done in a bipartisan way, which is a great segment to. I want to talk about your leadership on the Armed Services Committee. Prior to coming to VoteVets, I worked for Senator Gillibrand as her military legislative assistant. So I have actually seen firsthand in the room. I've traveled with your staff. And I've seen the care that you put into that work for Michigan and for service members across the country and stationed globally. Could you talk a little bit about your priorities when it comes to armed services and veterans affairs and what you're going to focus on when you win re-election to the Senate this November?
Well, it's as you can tell from my portfolio of committees, I'm the ranking member on Homeland Security, and I serve on the Armed Services Committee, so national security issues are always front and center for me. And given those two committees, I like to say I work with the home team and the away team when it comes to keeping us safe, and clearly with the military overseas. And I serve as the ranking member on a subcommittee that oversees our special operations forces and all the advanced research for the Department of Defense. But I'm always concerned, I'll mention one item in particular, always concerned about the health and welfare of the men and women who serve. And I've just recently passed legislation. We've got to continue to focus on this area. To help service members when they're leaving active duty and coming back home and transitioning into civilian life. How do we make that transition as smooth as possible and make sure that they get up on their feet and are successful? I recently passed legislation to expand the ability for veterans to use the GI Bill to get into apprenticeship programs and skilled trades. We always usually think of the GI Bill for folks going to a 4-year degree or 2-year degree, but you can use it in an apprenticeship program. Those don't pay a lot initially as you're getting those skills. So the GI Bill helps with housing and with food until you're up and you have your journeyman card. As I was talking about this bill, I met a Marine who said to me, who's separated from the Marine Corps, and said, I've always wanted to be a pipe fitter, but I'm older, I have a family, I have my wife, I have 2 children. It would be tough to go into an apprenticeship program. But with the GI Bill, I can go into this apprenticeship program and pursue my dream of being a skilled trades person. But unfortunately, we had this problem is that in order to get GI Bill benefits, you had to go through the VA. And in Michigan, for example, we have 1,100 apprenticeship programs that are approved by the Department of Labor. These are registered apprenticeships, but the VA only approved 100 for the GI Bill. That makes no sense. Someone coming off of duty should have the full range of apprenticeship programs to use their GI Bill. I worked in a bipartisan way. We came together, got that passed, it's signed into law, and it's the type of work that I've done in the past and will continue in the future.
Absolutely. No, it's incredibly important. And those jobs, those good union jobs, skilled trade jobs for veterans, we held a roundtable with Senator Duckworth, your colleague on armed services, and the Biden campaign a few weeks back and talked about the vice president's plan to build back better and invest in that type of work, which is a great transition. I want to talk real quick before we have to go about this week's DNC. Tonight, we're going to hear from Vice President Biden. Last night, we heard from Senator Harris. From your lens, looking at the Democratic Party, the breadth, the fact that we had Cindy McCain narrating a video, we had Governor Kasich speaking. What do you see when you look at this coalition, and what do you think it's going to mean for November 3rd?
Well, I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see people coming together and understanding. I think, and President Obama said it very well last night in a powerful speech. This election is truly about our democratic republic. This is about our democracy in the country. I can't think of a more consequential election in recent history where people have to show up to vote. To really make sure that this country has a strong democracy. The fundamental democratic rights that the men and women who serve in the military have offered up. So many sacrificed their life, but others were willing to go into harm's way to protect this democracy and the liberty and the freedoms that we enjoy. All of that is on the ballot. All of it will be there for us to vote. We've got to make sure people are out voting successfully. I'm incredibly excited to support Joe Biden. I was privileged during the roll call to give the vote total for the state of Michigan. And while I was there, I could talk about how Joe Biden, along with President Obama, but Joe Biden was a leader in making sure that our auto industry survived the financial crisis. Joe Biden understands manufacturing. He knows that in order to be a great country, you actually have to make stuff. Michigan's a great manufacturing state. We have a lot of great manufacturing across the country. Those are good paying jobs. They're a great multiplier effect for economic activity, but you need someone who's actually proven that they can get that done. And Joe Biden did that. When folks thought Detroit should go bankrupt and our auto companies would disappear, Joe Biden said, no, we're going to make sure these companies get back up on their feet. And literally, it's been estimated over 1.5 million jobs were saved because of the efforts that we saw in that administration. And Joe Biden was front and center and leader. When he's president of the United States, he's going to continue to focus on good paying jobs and expanding opportunities for veterans and everyday Americans so that they can live their version of the American dream.
Well said. Senator Peters, final question before we go. We need you back in the Senate. Veterans and service members in particular need your leadership and your voice. How can we get involved to help support your reelection to the Senate if we're in Michigan or spread out across the country?
Well, I would certainly love people to help out. Let me know. Reach out to my website. As you know, Michigan's a key battleground state for the presidency. I don't think you can be president of the United States without winning Michigan. My Senate race is one of the top races in the country. We have a real shot to take the majority in the Senate, but we have to hold Michigan. They're coming at me aggressively, and I need financial support, volunteer help, and people can go to petersformichigan.com is my campaign site, and we'd love to have volunteers and financial help to make sure that we keep Michigan blue.
Absolutely. Senator, sign me up for a phone bank shift. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Thanks for all you do, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, next, we're going to turn to Maryland Congressman Anthony Brown. He'll be a familiar face to many of you as a VoteVets leader in Congress. He represents Maryland's 4th congressional district and serves as the vice chair of the House Armed Services Committee. He's a retired colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, serving more than a quarter century as an aviator and JAG officer. In 2004, he was deployed to Iraq, where he earned a Bronze Star and became one of the nation's highest-ranking elected officials at that time to serve a tour of duty in that conflict. Prior to his election to Congress, Mr. Brown served for 8 years as Maryland's lieutenant governor and served in the House of Delegates before that. Congressman, welcome to VoteVets Live. Thank you so much for being here, and we love the backdrop that you have going.
Yeah, hey, thanks a lot. Let me get my camera up a little. I know what's going on here. Here we go. How's everything going this morning?
It's good. We've had I know you're just joining us, so we had a great conversation with Doug Wilson, Mayor Pete's National Security Advisor, and Sue Fulton. And we just finished with Senator Peters talking about what's happening in Michigan, and we have both sides of the Capitol when it comes to armed services this morning. So pretty good.
Great. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's been a great week, I think. Unfortunately, not in Milwaukee, but in states around the country, districts around the country. I think really projecting a strong message for Democrats, sharing our values, demonstrating we are a big tent and value the diversity of views and experiences and backgrounds that make up not only the Democratic Party, but really our country. So it's been an exciting week. Thanks for having me on this morning, Will.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about the convention and your thoughts. But before we do, I want to hit a couple of the pressing issues that are facing our country today. I mean, obviously, the reason that we are doing this virtually right now is the pandemic. It's taken more than 172,000 American lives, wrecked our economy. We've heard some of that in painful stories highlighted during the DNC. People, state and local governments need relief. House Democrats passed the HEROES Act more than 3 months ago, but the Senate and White House cannot get their act together. You have a unique perspective because you serve at the federal level. You also led as the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. Can you talk about where things stand on COVID relief? And from your background, what does the inaction mean to leaders in jobs like you used to hold and citizens who are out there on the front lines?
Sure. Look, I think it's really important that Congress, the president, federal government steps up and delivers support to state and local government. I spent 8 years as Maryland's lieutenant governor. It was during the Great Recession when state governments saw a dramatic drop off in revenues, income tax, property tax, because property values went down as well. And we would not have been able to survive had it not been for the Obama-Biden administration, the Recovery and Relief Act, and some of the other stimulus decisions and actions that they took. Well, we're in the same place right now. We've got this pandemic. It's a public health crisis. And in order to get to a better place, we've really had to shut down, slow down the economy. That has a dramatic impact on state and local government. And that's why, in a bipartisan way, Republican and Democratic governors, my governor, Governor Hogan, a Republican, joining with Governor Cuomo in New York and the National Government Association, said, hey, we need $500 billion. And our counties and municipalities need another $500 billion for a total of $1 trillion. Why? Because they have to balance their budgets. They don't have the luxury that the federal government has, the ability to borrow and run deficit spending. If they don't get that, what are we talking about? Cuts to teachers, firefighters, police, essential services. My governor just recently announced an 8% cut to the budget, and that includes furloughs and layoffs, teachers, fire, police, as I mentioned, health workers. Also talking about erasing pay raises and extra pension contributions for state employees, cuts to childcare, slashing funding to our state universities and community colleges, and rolling back spending on important programs such as the state's opioid response. So that's what happens if the GOP-led Senate and the Trump administration doesn't come back to the table, sit down with Democrats, and send more funding to state and local government.
Absolutely. It's really, watching those stories this week, the fact that we watched the Bruce Springsteen, the Rising montage, and instead of what it could be, it was hospital scenes and, body bag. I mean, it's crazy to think about. Not to keep the kind of somber note going, but I want to talk about the U.S. military and our national security. We've been talking about this throughout the week, trying to hit this theme that we knew in 2016 that the president was disgusting and disrespectful toward John McCain, Gold Star families, et cetera. But as president, he's matched that disrespect with action, and he has done real, tangible harm to our troops and their families. And it really seems like it's whenever it suits his perceived political needs. You've been a leader in fighting back against that. One example, that jumps out to me as an LGBTQ veteran is your work to block the president's hateful attempts to ban open transgender military service. What's your assessment of Donald Trump's record as commander-in-chief, and what have those type of attacks meant for military readiness and for our national security posture?
Yeah, first of all, President Trump has been an incompetent and uncaring, quite frankly, commander-in-chief, starting with banning transgender service members at a time when our nation's military needs the best and the brightest, and a time when we have difficulty recruiting. But even if we didn't, we live in a time in a nation where every person who wants to serve should be able to serve. We know that a more diverse organization, and that's no less true for the armed forces, is a more effective organization. It's more creative. It's more innovative. It brings diversity, brings ingenuity. And by banning transgender service members, we deprive our military of that innovation, that talent. And I think also it has a tremendous impact on readiness, not just from that innovation deprivation, but on morale. Young service members today, they're growing up in a world where they're looking to break down barriers. They look beyond the things that have traditionally divided us, like race and gender and identification and orientation. And they look at the true value and meaning of an individual. And if we deprive them of that by setting up barriers and saying, you're transgender, you can't serve, it's a throwback to the pre-1948 military when we said, you're African-American, you can't serve, or if you do, you can only serve in this unit. Or to women where we said, yeah, you can't serve, but then if you do, you're prohibited from serving in combat and other career fields. So, but it's not just the ban on transgender service members. This president, since day one, has undermined the military, unit cohesion and morale, which impacts readiness. Sending our military to the border with no clear mission and no clear purpose, that undermines readiness. Using the military and military-style law enforcement to quell civil protests, that undermines readiness. Having our service members marching in parades and putting them on display. Look, I spent 30 years in the military. Everybody loves a parade except for soldiers and sailors, airmen, and Marines that have to stand in those parades. But that's what he does. He parades them around. He claims that he's smarter than the generals, yet he acts recklessly when he withdraws our troops from Syria and abandons our faith with our partners. When he pardons war criminals and when he prevents the removal of Confederate names from Army installations like Fort Bragg and Fort Benning and Fort Rucker, that undermines morale. It has an impact on readiness. This commander-in-chief has been dangerous, and the best solution will come in November when he loses this election.
Absolutely. No, I think you're right. The only way is to get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House. And now we're going to turn on that note and talk a little bit about politics, about what we've seen at the DNC this week. An incredible night, 3 nights thus far, final night. Tonight, Talk a little bit about what you heard last night that stuck out to you, particularly your thoughts on Senator Kamala Harris's big speech last night.
Look, I think Kamala Harris demonstrated that she's going to be ready on day one to not only fill the role of vice president, but to be our commander in chief if circumstances suggest. I think it was more than solid delivery, not just style, but substance. The way that she connected her experience, her family, her upbringing, and her values to the issues that matter. She took appropriate jabs and pushed back on the reckless and dangerous Trump administration. But more importantly, I think she focused on what it means to govern in a Biden-Harris administration and how it will improve our lives. I think one of the best lines that I like from last night from Kamala's speech was when she contrasted President Trump with Vice President Biden. And she pointed out how President Trump turns tragedy into a political weapon, where Vice President Biden turns challenges into purpose. This will be an administration that focuses on the people. I think that Kamala picked up where President Obama left off in his earlier remarks, which it's about coming out and voting in November to defeat Donald Trump. But more importantly, it's about the people, the diversity of the American mosaic to stay engaged, because our democracy doesn't depend just on competent leadership, but it depends on civic engagement of each and every single one of us, whether you're an activist or a leader or an engaged citizen. The responsibility of ensuring our democracy, the success of our democracy, counts on each and every one of us. And I think that Senator Harris conveyed that as well as President Obama very effectively yesterday.
Absolutely. And as we work to put Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House, I want to touch on something because we had Senator Peters on. He's up for re-election this year. VoteVets is supporting some incredible Senate candidates, MJ Hagar in Texas, Mark Kelly in Arizona, Cal Cunningham in North Carolina, Army Reservist. We got Amy McGrath in Kentucky. You've been in the House. We have seen great leadership from House Democrats, from the Speaker, from you and others. How important is it for you all to have a functioning U.S. Senate with Mitch McConnell not in charge come November? Look,
it's vitally important. The House of Representatives has been very productive this term. We've demonstrated through our For the People agenda that we're going to fight for everything from voting rights to taking big money out of politics, climate change, criminal justice and police reform. So we're going to fight for all Americans, LGBTQ Americans, minorities, women. And we've passed 600 substantive bills, not just naming post offices, but bills that will impact and improve the lives of Americans. 150 of those have been signed into law, but the remainder are sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. 80% of what's sitting on his desk had bipartisan support, where Republicans and Democrats in the House came together and said, these are the things that we need to do to address the escalating costs of healthcare, to address this pandemic, to put us on the right footing to move forward as a nation. So unless we flip the Senate, if Mitch McConnell continues to lead that chamber, then it will continue to impede the progress, the journey, the path that this nation is on. Yes, it is very likely that we will not only maintain the majority in the House, we could very well expand that majority. Yes, it looks good. The numbers are there. We have to continue to work hard to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, president and vice president. But we need that Senate, because without that Senate, we run the risk of Mitch McConnell setting out to do the same thing he did to Barack Obama, which is declare that his number one priority will be to defeat Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And America can't stand for that. So the work that VoteVets are doing and that the supporters of VoteVets are doing to flip that Senate, to get great progressive candidates elected to the Senate is vitally important to the path, to keep us on that path to progress.
Absolutely. All right, Congressman Brown, one final question. The DNC comes to a close tonight, 70 days from the election. We hear it from people all the time, though, and it's no surprise. This is a tough time. People are trying to adjust, balance in their daily lives, reimagine businesses, take care of kids, be school teachers at home. What's your case to the people watching, the activists and organizers, to stay engaged in this campaign, to give their time and energy to support Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Democrats from Congress to the school board? Why should they be inspired, and why is it worth the time?
Look, democracy is about addition and not subtraction. And right now, we appear to be very unified as Democrats and many independents and like-minded Republicans united in the effort to defeat Donald Trump. But the message across the spectrum of Americans that want to see us in a better place is that this is your democracy. And Joe Biden understands that. He will work with you and invite each and every one of us in. We've seen that throughout the last 3 days of this convention, a variety and diversity of views and perspectives and experiences and backgrounds. And that is how he will govern. So everyone will have a seat at the table. As so many speakers mentioned, and President Obama reminded us yesterday, democracy is messy. But we welcome you into the mess, if you will, to make democracy work in America.
Absolutely. Well said. Congressman Anthony Brown, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for all of your support of our work here at VoteVets. It's great to see you. Stay safe, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, Will. You do the same.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. And finally, last but not least, once again, we're going to catch up with our friend Leo Cruz, the Veterans and Military Families Engagement Director for the Biden-Harris campaign. I see him there with his awesome home studio. Good morning, Leo. How are you?
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Doing well. It's interesting, Leo, because we decided to do this 9 a.m. live stream, and then the speeches, turns out, start at 9 p.m. and go to 11 p.m. So busy week. And I know you're in your Zoom chamber all day as well. So let's get right to it. First question. Last night, quite a lineup. We had the Speaker of the House. We had Senator Warren, who's behind you. We had President Obama and our next Vice President, Kamala Harris. What did you take away from last night's speeches?
Well, obviously loved Professor Obama's seminar on the importance of our Constitution and our sacred obligation to participate in our democracy. Always inspiring to hear the constitutional law professor speak on one of our most sacred documents in their founding of our nation. Senator Harris's speech reflected a historic moment of her nomination. And I loved how it shared the multi-dimensional intersectional woman that she is in her history and her passion for her family, but also this country. And then, was mostly moved by the number of young activists fighting to end gun violence and working to act against climate change, highlighting the victims of Trump's cruel immigration policies, to include the Marine spouse who was deported earlier in this administration, the hardworking Americans who are keep fighting to keep their small businesses running, and then leaders in the fight to end sexual assault and domestic abuse. They all remind us how Joe Biden's character and conviction make him the right person to put us on the path forward.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's preview tonight. Who we get to hear from tonight?
Yeah, well, tonight we get to hear from another former boss of mine, Senator Cory Booker. We also have California Governor Gavin Newsom, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, Navy veteran and former presidential candidate Mayor Pete Buttigieg, and then an Army veteran and American hero, Senator Tammy Duckworth, the Biden family, and finally Vice President Joe Biden, who will formally accept the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. And I'm looking forward to him giving one of his most important speeches of this campaign. I'm looking forward to hearing more from the everyday people that have been highlighted throughout the convention. It's been wonderful to see all the great diversity that the Democratic Party in America has to offer.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that everyone that we've had on this morning has touched on it, that you see the width of the support for the ticket this year, and you can feel the excitement, and you can feel how diverse it is, and reflecting the way that America is, who we are at our best, and frankly, like across political ideology. And this really is a battle for our democracy. So, Leo, final question today. I want you to close us out with a fun fact. You've done your research, so let's hear it.
Yeah, well, the fun fact, asking about Dr. Jill Biden, and we saw a lot of her story the other night, and what we're looking at now is, most people know that she's a teacher. She even taught at my local community college while serving as second lady. But what most people probably don't know is that while she was attending the University of Delaware, she briefly studied fashion and even spent some time working as a model in college, but ultimately decided to major in English. And there are plenty of students who are now better for her pursuing her education career.
Absolutely. That speech that she gave, her primetime speech delivered from the classroom, I know we talked about it already, but I'm not going to ask you, but I did tear up a bit. I think
every night. So you've had a reason to tear up. Every night has been amazing.
Yeah. Nobody said that the virtual DNC was going to make me sob every night. Tears of inspiration, just to be clear. All right, Leo, last big night tonight. Once we finish tonight, it's really game on. We got to get to November. Tell us one more time for everyone watching how they can get involved with Veterans and Military Families for Biden.
Yeah, your viewers can easily pop out their phone and text VMF, or Veterans and Military Family, to 30330. I also encourage them to text VOTE to that same number, 30330. So that way they can make sure that they're registered to vote, make sure that they're, I had to do this as well. Get your ballot by mail, get your ballot in as early. November 3rd is a deadline. We can start voting as soon as mid-September, and we need as many people as possible to vote. We cannot leave any ballot behind. And I appreciate all of VoteVets support in making this happen.
Absolutely. Leo, you're going to be back with us tomorrow. Stay here. We're gonna roll out the lineup for the final two VoteVets lives of the convention. Tonight, we have a special DNC primetime coverage with Congressman Ted Lieu at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are going to talk about policy. We'll talk about the convention. We're also going to play some games. We have some Joe Biden trivia. We will give some advice for congressional Republicans who may be looking for work post-November. It's going to be very fun. And tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern, we will close out the week with Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois and former Secretary of State John Kerry. And of course, Leo Cruz and Ron Pierce of the DNC will join us for that as well. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Leo, for being here. Don't forget to tune in to tonight's big night at the Democratic National Convention 2020. Thanks.